Okay. Well, assalamu alaikum, guys. Sorry for looking kind of funny right now. I just woke up and I haven't really done my hair or anything yet. But we need to do an important live stream. It was kind of unexpected. I'm just doing it as soon as I can, so that's now. We're gonna talk about the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina. Oh, where do I even begin? Here we go. You know those comments are going to be wild. And so for those who don't know, Robeson County, North Carolina is one of the most racially diverse counties in all of the USA to be considered a rural county, meaning it's not like, New York City or Los Angeles. It's like some random place in Indiana or Iowa that you don't know the name of. It's one of those types of places. It's rural. Not a lot of people go there. It's not a major city on the map, but the people there are great people with great hearts. And they're hard worker people. They're that type. It's a rural place. It's always on a list of contenders for the most racially diverse rural counties in all of the USA. Robeson County, North Carolina. It's also the county where most members of the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina live. Way back in the colonial era, hundreds of years ago, there were many different Native American tribes between the southern coasts of the Chesapeake Bay and the Pee River Valley in South and North Carolina's coastal plain. So all along like the outermost regions of the Piedmont and the coastal plain right down to the coast, from the Chesapeake Bay right down into the northern coastal areas of South Carolina, you had many different tribes that spoke languages from, as classified today and with today's knowledge, from 3 different language families at least. There might have even been some language isolates, some extinct languages that we don't know about that aren't mentioned in history, some unique languages that people thought were the same language and not, or just a separate dialect, when really, if they were around today, people might have found out they're actually separate languages. There was a lot going on, lots of different cultures, lots of different people. Native Americans is a broad umbrella term for all these different tribes with different cultures living in that area. Most of them died from disease and genocide and forced removal and many other issues caused by colonization. And the deliberate genocide that continues into modern era was really ramped up back then and was pretty bad, right? But some Native American folks made their way down to the area known as Drowning Creek and the area around Robeson County near the border of North and South Carolina in the Carolina Sandhills and coastal plains. And on the intercoastal plain area around there in that swamp, an area that was kind of unmapped and unusually sparsely populated by Europeans for an area along the east coast. It was a wild refuge where these people could escape, kind of like the Great Dismal Swamp Maroons, which many of us Karshirskian people believe that's the origin of the Tidewater, Appalachian, and Midwestern groups, and any communities that descend from them, like some of the Karshirskians down in Florida, maybe even coastal Georgia. So, the Lumbee tribe has a similar story of Native Americans, lower class white folks, like poor white people who weren't like rich plantation owners, and free and escaped runaway black people who got out of slavery either by being freed or by taking freedom into their own hands and finding their freedom. These people came together in the swamps and formed a community that is today known as the Lumbee. Like most Native American tribes east of the Appalachian Mountains, outside of places like upstate New York and Maine, the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina consists of either entirely or almost entirely just mixed natives. And it is very likely that a lot of Lumbee folks have low blood quantum. However, DNA testing has showed that the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina has enrolled members, 55,000 to be exact, and when we took DNA tests of many different members of the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina and averaged them out, They are around 94 to 96% mix of black and white. But that extra 4 to 6% of their DNA that isn't mixed of black and white is usually Native American as well as Middle Eastern and North African DNA, curiously enough. So the average Lumbee person is anywhere from 2 to maybe as much as 6% Native American DNA, which doesn't sound like a lot and not the majority of the average Lumbee's DNA when you average them all out. Some of them might have lower, some of them might have higher amounts of native DNA, but that is elevated levels of Native American ancestry. For comparison, the average white American is usually nearly 100% European or 1 or less % African, and the average white American doesn't have any Native American ancestry in amounts significant enough to show up on DNA tests as even trace amounts, although many do have tiny trace amounts like under 1%. The average black American has 0 to 2% Native American ancestry, with some communities having as much as 3%. But many Lumbees have more than 4%, sometimes even 6% Native American DNA. These are elevated levels of genetic Native American DNA that matches many other Eastern groups of contemporary Native American tribes, including federally recognized ones, such as the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Indians. So what's the deal with people saying the Lumbee are not Native American? Sure, they don't have a lot of Native American DNA, but anyone who knows the history of blood quantum understands that they have elevated levels of Native American DNA, and they have actual Native ancestry and have been claiming to be natives for centuries and have not been disconnected from that identity. They kept their unique culture, their unique dialect of English called Lumbee English, which is a distinct dialect. It has words from the old coastal islands of North Carolina. It's related to Ocracoke Brogue, Tangier Island English from Virginia, and some of the old unnamed extinct Pidgin and Creole dialects spoken in coastal Virginia by the Tidewater Creoles, a subgroup of the Karcherskin community. That's us, Karcherskin folk. And the Lumbee, their English is most closely matched with the Old English spoken on the Barrier Islands in North Carolina, the Ocracoke Brogue, which only has a few hundred speakers as of the time of this live stream. And that is one of the oldest continuation of a dialect of English in Eastern North America. It dates back to really old colloquial speech from colonial America, from before American independence. This means that the Lumbee community's English is derived from some of the first European settlers who spoke English coming into the Carolinas. And once you are looking at a family tree, if you do not descend from recent immigrants to the USA, but from more old stock roots, that gives you an exponentially higher chance of having a Native American ancestor than, say, descending from German or Polish immigrants that came in the mid to late 1800s, who typically have none. So the Lumbee tribe, essentially, they're just mixed natives, just like many other Eastern groups. But the issue is, they're not just mixed with Native American and white, they're mixed with Native American, white, and black. Dun dun dun! We're talking about a group of mixed race ancestry that's part black in colonial America. And now you can immediately begin to see the problems that still linger today. Due to racism and anti-blackness, the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina is often labeled as pretendians. People say that they're black and they want to hide their black ancestry and not be Native American. Many Lumbee folks would admit that they have black ancestry, or would be surprised to find they have it and didn't know, but they've embraced it over time. But many people are trying to strip away their Native American identity from them, which they have and which they are, and saying, you guys are just self-hating black people, and you need to accept that you're just black and nothing else. Even though they're literally mixed, and they're not just normal black Americans. They're really a distinct community of their own, with their own culture, and it's been this way for centuries. So people saying this stuff online has pushed some Lumbee actually pushed people away from black ancestry, which wouldn't have happened otherwise, because this is a mixed Native American community, and they're fighting a really hard fight, an uphill battle for federal recognition. The Eastern Band of the Cherokee Indians has been concerned because if the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina gets the federal recognition that they deserve, then they will be getting benefits for the government meant for Native Americans. And the Cherokee tribe, the Eastern Band specifically mainly, they're concerned because right now they're the largest recognized tribe east of the Mississippi. They don't want the Lumbee to take that spot. With 55,000 members, they'd be the largest tribe east of the Mississippi. And if they build a casino, then the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians has another rival in North Carolina, another federally recognized tribe with a casino. And so, they're worried about losing their revenue. So they've been lying and using anti-black racism and slander for decades to try to put down the Lumbee tribe, pretending like we're the only real Native Americans, when the Eastern Band of Cherokee is just as mixed, and there's many members of the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Indians with blonde hair and blue or green eyes. And of course, they are not pretendians, they're actual Native Americans, it's just that they're mixed race. It's pretty simple, not that complicated, it should be easy to comprehend. You'd think that a tribe that relies on lineal descent and isn't very strict about blood quantum would understand the concept that Native Americans can be mixed. They do, but the leaders of the Cherokee tribe keep lying to their citizens, telling them that the Lumbees have no Native American ancestry whatsoever, and that they're just a group of pretendians that want a casino and are trying to take away their resources, which just isn't true. DNA shows they have elevated levels of Native American ancestry, and they've been in contact and keeping connection to that identity and saying they're Native American the whole time for centuries. These aren't black people who just started saying, let's claim we're Native Americans so we can get a casino. They've been saying this for long before the casino days, when Native tribes, which are sovereign nations, begin opening up like casinos and tobacco stores to make money. You see, Native American tribes, like real ones, and the ones especially recognized by the federal government whose sovereignty should be respected, they are sovereign nations. And a sovereign nation has its own laws. So imagine the Navajo Nation, wedged between Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah. Maybe those 4 states can make laws against gambling. Let's say they do. The Navajo Nation can make laws allowing gambling and having casinos. Then suddenly, cities in all 4 of those states, from Phoenix, Arizona, to Denver, Colorado, to Salt Lake City, Utah, to Santa Fe and Albuquerque, New Mexico, they all go to the Navajo Nation. All these millions of people who want to gamble, the nearest casino that's legal that they can safely go to will be on Navajo land. So in that hypothetical scenario, the Navajo could open up a casino on their reservation and allow outsiders to go there and spend money there. That's a source of income and revenue, which will help that community to take care of itself and have income. This is very important for underprivileged indigenous communities, especially since many Indian reservations for Native Americans who have no connection to India usually, these reservations are often on the poorest soil. Native American reservations are not land that the government gave to Native Americans. It's just a land that the government didn't want because it had like the worst, most infertile soil. It's just a land that wasn't taken from the Native Americans. So many treaties have been broke. So much. Most of the land that the U.S. government promised to indigenous people and signed in treaties has been stolen. Look at Oklahoma. Look at Central Florida. All of the interior areas on the Florida Peninsula was supposed to be for the Seminole. the descendants of Creeks and a bunch of other Native Americans from the Deep South that said, yeah, frick this, we're not getting colonized and assimilating and losing our identity. So they went down into the swamps of Spanish-controlled Florida, where they could disappear and escape from the English colonials and have their own society. Joined up by remnants of all the Florida tribes that were already there, such as, groups like the Alachua, the Apalachee, the Timucuans. They all joined to form the Seminole Confederacy. And you also have the Black Seminoles. Thousands of black people in the South were told, hey, you want freedom? Run to Florida. It's part of Spain. The British and the English speakers can't govern you. The USA, the English, they don't have control over it. It's Spain. You go to Florida, you'll be free. And so all these black folks started coming down to Florida. They got adopted into the Seminole tribe, and they became Black Seminoles. Many of them even intermarried with the Seminole. So not only are they Seminole by adoption and culture, many of them are genetically Seminole. They're a mix of black and Native American, Afro-Indigenous, just like the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina. And thankfully the Seminoles got federal recognition. Especially the Seminole tribe of Florida is fascinating because they are the Seminole that never surrendered. Some Seminole had their hand forced, their relatives were kidnapped, and they were going to be separated forever. If you know anything about generally speaking, Native American culture in general, not any specific tribe, but often in most tribes, family is very important in many Native American societies. And that was no different for the Creek and the Seminole who descended from the Creek and Yamasee and all these other tribes, right? So, when the Seminole, some of their relatives were kidnapped and put on reservations in Oklahoma, the U.S. government said, hey, guess what, buddy? I got your family. You ever want to see them again? You gotta go, and you gotta go with them. That got a lot of them. That was the only way the U.S. government could get any Seminole to leave Florida. And even then, a couple thousand were still staying for a while. It took a long time. Eventually, only a few hundred were left, maybe 300 to 500. Most of them was in the Florida Everglades, where the white man was like, man, look at this mosquito hell. I'm not going in there to get the Seminole out. They can just stay out there and they won't be a problem to us. They'll probably die away. But they were wrong to think that, because indigenous people know the land well and they know how to survive. They've been doing it on this continent for like 23,000 years, possibly even more, right? So the Seminole, of course, they just survived in the Everglades, and now there's the Seminole tribe of Florida. They're the descendants of those, couple hundred people who were left in Florida after most were relocated to the Seminole land allotted for them in Oklahoma. And some of that was stolen from them because the U.S. government let us break in treaties. Now, if you look down in Florida, there are several thousand Seminole there, descended from just a couple hundred people. Over a century or two time passing, the population continues to grow as people have families. So, the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina mirrors stories like the Seminole, Native Americans mixing with black and white people and going out into the swamp and forming a strong triracial community. And these communities of triracial people that mix and intermarry for generations, there are over 200 of them in the United States. Or that's just the number that was recorded by the evil Mr. Walter Plecker and his racist colleagues back in the 18 and 1900s. These groups called triracial isolates include the Afro-Seminole. The Gullah Geechee people are usually not mixed. Some of them are. There's some of the black Americans with the highest amounts of black ancestry. After the Civil War, a lot of the white plantation owners fled, and the Sea Islands in some areas, it was all just black people left there. And so the land they were forced to work on, it became their own. They became some of the first free black landowners after the Civil War. But many communities like the Lumbee, the Afro-Seminole, the Carmel, Ohio Indians, the Chestnut Ridge people, the Melungeons, Karcherskians like yours truly, and many other communities form. And as a Karcherskian person, I can really sympathize with the Lumbee people, because people who don't know the history of the Lumbee people and the blood quantum and what happened to the Native Americans, They don't understand. Native Americans, a lot of them don't believe in racial purity. The vast majority of them reject it. Blood quantum was invented by the US government to try to erase Native Americans. Okay, some tribes, like for example the Seminole Nation of Florida, what was left of them after all is said and done, there's only a couple hundred people left, and many of them are already related. Over generations of intermarrying, they'd all be cousins, and if that kept going, they'd inbreed. They had to marry outside the tribe. The US government turned this into a racial purity thing where it's all about the Native American blood, and their nativeness can be withered away generation by generation. But the truth is, all that really matters is that someone is a legitimate descendant who actually has Native American ancestors. And over generations, the culture has been passed down to them, and they've stayed part of the community. They know who they are, and their community claims them. And mixed Native descendants who have been disconnected from their Native ancestry often are allowed to reconnect. They can go find these tribes that they descended from doing genealogical research. And some tribes have enrollment requirement that allow mixed natives to re-enroll. So, some tribes have a high blood quantum, and there's reasons for that. The tribes are sovereign nations, and they have the right to determine who belongs and who shouldn't be part of their tribe, and that must be respected. But a lot of tribes, and increasingly more and more today, they're recognizing the problem. They're being erased by the blood quantum. So many tribes are now basically saying, you gotta have Native American ancestry. You can't just be like, oh, my grandpa was a Cherokee prince, so I'm a join. That's not how it works. But if someone has solid evidence and genealogy, they're like, look, this person right here is an enrolled member of the tribe, and this is my great-great-great-grandpa, and this is their kids, and their kids kept the culture. Here's an old photo album showing them attending the tribal powwow, and we were disconnected in the family, and now I want to reconnect. Then that's up to the tribe. The tribe can tell these mixed people trying to reconnect, like, hey, welcome back. We'll teach you the culture. We'll teach you the language, so you can reconnect with the community and enroll. And you're part of the family. You're our blood. You descended from us. And other tribes might be like, well, it's been several generations, and you're really disconnected, And then, of course, there's the issue of, are these people reconnecting genuinely, Or are these people who just want to take resources from Native people, and they don't even actually have any connection to the culture or any interest in it? So Native identity is a complex issue, but it's not based on racial purity, which is why in my last live stream, where I was kind of angry and just crashing out the whole time, I was talking about how I was arguing about how people shouldn't ask Native Americans, hey, how much Indian blood you got? That's really disrespectful. It's dehumanizing. It's making these people feel like they're not whole and like they're not Native enough. Their community claims them. They're enrolled in an actual, real, legit tribe. They know who they are. That's what matters. Are they Native or are they not? Doesn't matter what percentage of blood they had, That's the cool thing. So, the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina, are they pretendians? No. Some people could try to do a lot of digging and gather a bunch of information and label some individual Lumbee folks as descendians. They could try to make the argument that they're descendians. These are mixed Native descendants who, grew up identifying as just white or just black. And then one day, because they thought they could steal benefits from indigenous people, they start saying they're Native. And they're not really a pretendian. They do actually have the Native ancestry they claim they do, but they haven't been connected to it at all. They didn't reconnect it. Their tribe doesn't accept them, so they're descendians. It's like pretendians, but they actually do got that little percent, but they still ain't part of the tribe, and they're still deceiving, But the thing about the Lumbee community is they are the community. Tribes have the right to recognize their members. They know who they are. They know who belongs to them. If someone else comes and they're like, yo, I'm from the ancient Egyptian, Nubian, Black Cherokee Nation, the real Cherokees will be like, no, dude, we don't claim you. We don't know who you are. Do you got any proof of any connection to us? Right? So the Lumbee Nation is the nation itself. And of course, it recognizes its members of Lumbee as Lumbee, and it's not nothing new. This isn't something they just invented. This has been a distinct community for centuries, guys. And they used to be called different things. An argument against them is, well, they used to claim they were Cherokee or Croatan, but it's not really like that. The thing is just with the colonization, a lot of the ancient culture and pre-colonial contact practices that all these different tribes that the Lumbee descend from would have had, a lot of these traditions were erased. They were along the east coast on the coastal plains and the Tidewater region. They were some of the first natives to convert to Christianity, learn English, and start having their identity stripped away from them. But over all this time, they still knew they were native. They might not have a distinct Lumbee language. It's not like we can say, guys, look, this is the Lumbee language. It's a Native American language from the Algonquian branch. Maybe one day they'll discover something, find an old document, Maybe they got a cool Creole language that's heavily derived from indigenous words. I believe that there's something yet to be discovered about that if they keep doing digging. But they lost a lot of their identity. But still, they had their community, and they still knew they were natives, and they identified as that. And they continuously had a distinct culture. And over time, they kept developing new practices too, like the Lumbee pine cone patchwork, an indigenous art design developed by the Lumbee community, and it's distinct to them. They created it. So a lot of their culture was lost from colonization. They've been learning from other tribes who visit when they host powwows. Members of other tribes have taught the Lumbee some of their own knowledge. A lot of that's from the Pan-Indian movement, as it's called. This is not unusual at all. A lot of eastern tribes host powwows and stuff, which is really more of a Great Plains Indian tribe thing, traditionally speaking. So they have adopted cultural processes and practices from other nations. When people from those nations came to them and taught them it, there's an argument about it being cultural appropriation or appreciation and partaking in the culture. But the Lumbee do have their own distinct culture. It's just a lot of the indigeneity of it has been stripped from them. But they do have unique traditions and practices, often centuries old, that developed within their community that's unique to them. And all the time, they're discovering things about themselves and bringing old traditions back to life again and innovating new, uniquely Lumbee things, which is pretty incredible. So that is my live stream. That's why I'm standing up for the Lumbee folks. I hope they get federal recognition. Now, I'm not going to talk about my opinion on Donald Trump, and this isn't where you can comment about yours. That's irrelevant. But I'm going to say Donald Trump, among people who don't like him, he's controversial. There's people who like him, there's people who don't. Donald Trump is the person recognizing the Lumbee Nation. They've been fighting for 150 years to get federal recognition, so it doesn't matter if Satan himself gave it to them, they would take it from Satan. Not that they want to follow and worship Satan and like him, but they really want federal recognition. If Satan himself would give it to him, a lot of the Lumbee folks would be like, give me that, and they'd take it from him. Does that mean they'd ally with him and partner with him? No, not really. Some of the leaders of the Lumbee tribe have endorsed President Trump because he's giving them recognition. This has outraged a lot of the liberal people in the indigenous community, and this has led to more alienation of the Lumbee tribe and more slander against them, and more people saying like, look, they voted for the person we don't like, so that proves their race is illegitimate, which I think is just bonkers of a thought process. Black and Native American people voted for Trump all the time. I'm not saying I support Trump, or if and by saying that I don't support him, I'm not saying that I'm against him either. I'm just saying it how it is. People of any color can vote for politicians, and just because they disagree with you doesn't mean you get to decide their race for them and tell them, nah, you get to be white now because you voted for Trump. That's not how it works. Many of Navajo voted for Trump. Does that mean the Navajo aren't indigenous anymore? No. Some liberal indigenous people will be very disappointed and upset, but we shouldn't let politics divide people like that. You know, politics should divide people politically, maybe, but it shouldn't make people become, divided among racial and ethnic tensions. That's a recipe for disaster in this country. If you know where America is right now, the last thing we need is for this political party to be for white people and this one to be for black people and this one for natives. When you do that, the Second American Civil War is inevitable and you're screwing this country over and you're asking for bloodshed. But the thing is, if Joe Biden was offering the recognition and gonna recognize them, they would take it from him. If Lee Harvey or Billie Eilish, anyone in the world, they would take it from him. They're just taking the recognition. Some of the leaders of the Lumbee tribe are praising Trump. It's not because they want people to be deported and they love everything he's doing and they agree with every word he says. Some of them, they kind of have had their hand forced where they really have to suck up to him, be like, Mr. Trump, you're such a great man. But really, they just wanted the recognition. If Trump didn't offer them recognition and was just like other presidents like Biden who just didn't really do anything about their issue of needing recognition, they probably wouldn't care about him too much. You know what I mean? So, yeah, coming from the Karcherskian community, we have been a distinct multi-ethnic and multiracial community for centuries. But we chose the name Karcherskian in 1991 so that we didn't get absorbed, because we're all mixed folks. Some people like me, people look at us and they assume I'm white, and other people, like for example my grandpa, he's a lovely dude, nice guy, shout out to my grandpa. People look at him, they assume he's black. But in reality, we're all mixed, and we can't choose what color we're born. We get put in boxes. People will try and tell me that I'm white. They'll say, your grandpa's black. They'll say, your cousin looks like they're Mexican, whatever that means. Mexicans can look like anything, and they're not from Mexico. They're trying to categorize us into neat boxes, but we're multi-generationally mixed race. We don't fit in neat boxes. The Karcherskian community in London, Ohio, the Whitlow, Tulliver, and Napper families and others, these guys can have biological siblings of completely opposite shades on a human skin rainbow spectrum. You can get one kid with like light olive tan skin, green eyes, and blonde curly hair and a bunch of freckles. You can get another kid with really frizzy, kinky, dark hair and dark skin, but they might still have like blue eyes or something, or high cheekbones. You might have someone who looks like a white guy, but they got like wavy or curly hair and they got a broad nose or something, So like people are trying to categorize us into white, black, Native American, this, that, but we're just mixed folks, right? And we didn't want to be absorbed and have our mixed culture erased because we have traditions in our families passed down from white and black ancestors and some from Native and other ancestors too. And it created a blended culture when we take all these traditions from different people of different backgrounds and we observe them side by side. We mix some of it together and blend it and we innovate our own traditions. We had our own thing going, but it wasn't documented. It was just stuff in family households. We weren't known as any distinct people. A brother of a black person was labeled a white person, but the two brothers are biological brothers, and they're both mixed. So our community in 1991, we got together and we decided to adopt the term Karcherskian to give ourselves a name and a sense of identity so our culture and our practices don't go extinct. And in the last couple years on the internet, the term's starting to spread around and catch on. No anthropologists have really written a major report. There's not much scholarly information available on us yet. So a lot of people are like, I can't find any mention of the Karcherskian community before 1991. So that means you guys are fake and you made it up. And we have disproven this over and over again. We keep explaining it's a newer term for a very old group of people, And I'm a proud descendant of Louis Love Tulliver from London, Ohio. And he's one of the most famous Karcherskian people from London, Ohio. Him and his ancestors, they had origins in the Appalachian Mountains, in the area where the Melungeons live. But if you go on the family tree and trace it back further, they actually came from the Tidewater community, and they're part of the Karsheriskian community. And today, most of them live up in Ohio on the glaciated plains that were flattened by the glaciers, or along the Great Lakes and stuff, and in big cities like Columbus. And it's not really an Appalachian culture. We've not been labeled as Melangen. There's possibly genetic links and family connections to the Melangens, but the Karsheriskian family in London, Ohio, all these Karsheriskian folks, so really we have a distinct community going on. But, I was telling some of my relatives, yeah, when I was in London, Ohio, studying the Karsheriskian community, I got tipped off about the Napper family, one of the main surnames you hear when you look up last names of the Karsheriskians in Madison County, Ohio, which is the community I descended from, London, Ohio's Karsheriskian community. They said, yeah, so like there were these two guys, they got together, a man and a woman. Like these people got married, a man and a woman. They had like 20 kids. Like that's not an over-exaggeration. They either had 20 kids or they had over 20 kids. It might have been like 23. They had a bunch of siblings, and they were known as the Nappers. And a lot of them, they were called black people, but if you looked at them, they're today what people call light-skinned black people, kind of like how people think of President Barack Obama. And many of them got like blue and green eyes. They got like high cheekbones and stuff. And like me, many of them have these like slanted eyes, where you can tell there's like an epicanthic fold, but it's not too visible. It's not very obvious because the native DNA has diluted. But they have like high cheekbones, stuff like that, And you can tell that they're mixed if you know what a mixed person typically looks like. Of course, you can't really tell people's DNA by looking at them, but like going off like averages and stuff, you know what I mean? But these people, they were often labeled as black, and some of them get labeled as white if they're light skinned. And as we've been doing for centuries, some of the paler Karsheriskian folks would try to pass as white to avoid discrimination and stuff, but we're mixed and stuff. Nowadays, it's safe, so you get people like me in the Karsheriskian community. People think I'm a white person, but I've never seen myself that way at all. I don't think I'm white. If people tell me I'm white, I'll tell them, actually, I'm mixed. I'm from this Karsheriskian community. Or I'll tell them I'm part black. Or, I have black and Native American ancestry, and also tiny bits of Jewish and Malagasy and Middle Eastern ancestry, and Roma. And these people are like, what does that mean? What are you talking about? I'm looking at you and you look white. When I lived in London, Ohio, people could tell by looking at me when I was younger. I used to be a bit darker and stuff. And plus, small town, everyone knew my family, but I was related to the White and Whitelow family. So I got discriminated for being Karsheriskian. I remember coming home from school and telling my adopted mom, Val, hey mom, I just came home from school, this teacher got mad at me and flipped out on me and was saying mean names and being rude to me. They kept calling me all these words I never even heard before. Ain't that the darnest thing? They called me a knee growth, like my knees was growing. They said, what? And I was like, my teacher, they got mad at me. They said it was a knee growth. She got my brother Anthony, was telling him, like, did you hear this? They're saying they was calling him a Negro. Me, I got called that word. People drove by me on the street just a couple days ago when I was walking down the street, down the highway, somewhere in the southeastern USA. Someone drove by, white man, had the window rolled down. He was yelling the N-word with a hard ER. I'm gonna say like a Fisher instead to like explain without being offensive. If he said, if Fisher was the N-word, he drove by, he was looking at me out the roll down window, he was like, Fisher, 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 Fisher. I was like, what the heck just happened, So with mixed race people, identity can be complicated. Some people, they have an identity crisis or they get issues because people are questioning their identity. And if we identify how we really are, people try to treat us like we're crazy, Like with Donald Trump talking about Kamala Harris being, from the Indian subcontinent, but also having ancestry derived from Africa, being a mix of sub-Saharan African and South Asian, or black and Indian, And Trump would be like, Kamala Harris is saying she's Indian here. She's saying she's black hair. It's like, well, yeah, Kamala Harris is Indian. Kamala Harris is black. because she's mixed race. She is kept in touch with Indian culture and community. She is kept in touch with black culture and black community. Both of those communities still claim her, and she's had contact with them. So she's both. So that was my live stream on the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina. They are the victims of anti-black racism and a lot of slander. More Americans need to study the history of blood quantum and how people, especially the US government, tried to erase Native Americans. You have to understand, the Native Americans aren't being handed free for handouts. These people were nearly wiped out. Disease killed 95% of them, and then their populations were cut in half over and over by genocide. Many of them were forced removed from their land. And most of these reservations, as I said earlier, it's not land the government gave them. It's the land that the settlers didn't want, that just wasn't taken from them. Like, look at the Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota. It has a life expectancy in the 30s. That's what people there might die before they even turn 27. People have high suicide rate, drug overdose. Why? Because it's poverty. The Rosebud Reservation is here in the USA, but it's like a third world country. Some people there don't even have access to flowing water, okay? And the land is not fertile. You can't really grow a lot. You can't really do much with it. These people are stuck way out there in the middle of nowhere. It's the land that wasn't stolen from them because no one wanted it. The government isn't giving Native Americans free handouts. You know, what's happening is justice. They're getting opportunities to education and equal economic opportunities. These people have been deprived for so long, and there's so much issues, multi-generational trauma, drug abuse, suicide, and all these issues. And it's because of poverty. It's a sign of poverty. That's what happens every time you get a community in that kind of poverty, disadvantaged community. So that's what we see going on all around the country. And we see these people slandering the Lumbee folks because of anti-black racism. Have you ever seen people talk about the Eastern Band of Cherokee that's trying so hard to keep the Lumbee down right now? Saying, you guys ain't Native American, Cherokee people are white. Look, these guys got blonde hair and green eyes. No one should ever say that. That's incredibly ignorant. That's an incredibly ignorant thing to say, you know? Native Americans are the only people here in the USA that are given pedigrees like this by outsiders, where people try to treat them like a dog. You know, are you pure breed? Like, this is like Hitleristic way of thinking. Is that a word? It's a word, I invented it. Hitleristic. It's a Hitleristic way of thinking, you know? Have you ever heard people talking just like, you know, NPC conversation while you're riding on a school bus? Do you ever hear people saying like, is Barack Obama real black? No, man, he's got low blood quantum. That dude is probably only a third black. Yeah, man, like Barack Obama, he might actually be a pretend black, you know, like, he's not real. He ain't actually one of us, you know. Like, how much black blood does Obama really have? Do you ever hear people say that? No, you don't even hear people say that ever. Nobody's saying this, except in the last couple years, because, you know, just in the last 2 or 3 years, there's been an issue where in Hollywood and like commercials and actor and actress casting, when there needs to be a role for a black person, they always choose the light-skinned black people or the mixed ones. They would choose someone like me, and, you know, they wouldn't choose someone like, you know, the average Gullah Geechee person or someone who's often dark-skinned, right? And that's a major issue in the black American community. So we've been seeing these people saying like, all these mixed race people, they're mixed race, and that's okay, but we have to stop saying they're black if we're going to use them to replace black people in the media like this. It's becoming an actual problem that some black folks are starting to push back on online these last couple years. But as of now, at least, that's still a minority opinion. That's not really the same thing we're dealing with, you know. No one's saying these people are imposters and they're actually white, fake people pretending to be black. It's just an issue of colorism in America and internalized racism and issues like that, you know. And like a bias in the media and stuff that selects for Eurocentric beauty features. That's a whole other can of worms. That's a controversial topic that I'm not gonna speak on, because I have a very loose, shaky standing in the Black American community. Look at me. That's enough. I don't need to say anything else. I think other Black Americans who, have more experience being stereotyped because they're black people who look more black than me, I think it's their job to talk about this topic, and you should go listen to their opinions and what different people from that area are saying. Just hear them out and listen to them. I'm gonna let them speak on it. And yeah, that's been the end of my live stream. The Lumbee tribe of North Carolina, people gave them all these different names. They were called Croatan, Cherokee. No one really knew what tribe they were from. They lost their language. They didn't know exactly everything because so much was lost during colonization. But they knew that they were Native American and they had some of their culture left. And they clung on to that identity tight as they could. They formed a new community known as the Lumbee, and they've been seeking federal recognition for a long time. I think they deserve it. That's my opinion. What do you guys think? Comment down below. And cheers, as always. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ya Ali Haidar.